Thursday, May 21st. Time marches on. God, it's kind of incredible. Like I said before, it blows my mind that I worked on the music for the movie Groundhog Day and then find myself living Groundhog Day every day. It's pretty crazy. One correction that I want to make, I put it on the page, but I want to verbalize it. On the Corey Wells video that I posted, I mistakenly said Jeff Porcaro was the drummer on it. But further investigating, because I wasn't really sure. I thought it was, but the drummer on that project is the great Mike Baird. Mike and I have done tons and tons and tons of work over the years. He's a fabulous drummer in LA. He's one of the first call guys, and I took him to Japan with me on a project over there, and he's a pretty special musician, and so it was a error in judgment on my part, and I wanted to give a shout out to Mikey. When we used to do all of Mike Post's TV shows, starting with the Rockford Files and the A-Team and Hill Street Blues and LA Law and Magnum PI and I got just so many of his shows. Generally, it was Mike was the drummer on all that. The ones that he didn't do, Willie Ornelas was the drummer on the others. And Willie's another fabulous LA-based drummer. So I just want to try to keep all this straight and give credit where credit's due. But sometimes after this many years and sessions, you start to scramble up things a little bit. And a lot of it's hard to document, finding who did what on things without actually having an album jacket in front of me. And I would say out of the 2,600 plus albums that I've played on, I probably have about 30 of them in my possession. So the rest of it's completely guesswork. But so I'm gonna move on today. I was all set to play. I had either Tari and Matador, Billy Cobham, or Dr. My Eyes from Jackson Browne, set to go. I've been thinking about them, and I started thinking, and all of a sudden, one of the greatest singers I've ever worked with just came right roaring into my mind. And I wanted to honor her today. So I'm just going to play a song that we did, and then tomorrow I'll actually sit down and play either Tari and Matador, maybe Dr. My Eyes. But for today, I just want to reflect on Linda Ronstadt. Linda's probably one of the finest musicians I've ever known. I've known Linda for decades and decades, and she is an absolute American treasure. When she opens her mouth, it's just the angels sing, as people would say. And she's really a force of nature. She has followed her own path through so much of her career. I mean, she's a great rock and roll pop singer. And then as time went on, she loved the Great American Songbook. And she's one of the very first pop singers who delved into it. They managed to do it with Nelson Riddle, and Nelson pulled out all his old Sinatra charts. So this stuff was like as credible as it can be. And she did just an exquisite job on the Lush Life and everything that she's done that follows. Then after that, she wanted to do Broadway. So then all of a sudden she's doing the Pirates of Penzance and different shows. She wanted to sound credible when she did, I forget which one, La Boheme or one of those shows, and studied Italian so that she could really sing with a veracity that was credible. And then she's of Mexican heritage and grew up in Tucson, and her father, his whole musical experience was all these beautiful old Mexican songs, so she did the tribute to her father album, her Spanish album. And it was one of the best live shows I've ever seen. I mean, they had the best mariachis on stage and dancers, and Linda was in full regalia on the show and singing her butt off. She's absolutely an American treasure, as I said. She's also funny as hell. She is such a character. And we were doing one of her projects. We did a couple of them up north in the Bay Area. One we did at Skywalker Ranch, George Lucas's studios, and it was a funny experience because she's very fond of Jimmy Webb as a songwriter, and we all are. I mean, Jimmy's a really unique, remarkable songwriter, and they had a exquisite grand piano. And it was set up in a side room off of the studio. The main room of the studio was massive because they could do all the Star Wars scoring in there, so it was a room that could hold a huge orchestra and stuff. The only thing in that room when we were working was Carlos Vega and his drum kit. I was in a little ISO booth playing bass, and Jimmy was in a side room that they had set up where they could really open the piano and let it breathe and really have full fidelity, because that's really the way a piano needs to be recorded, ultimately. It's a little frustrating when you go in the studio and there's a gorgeous piano and they've crammed the mics inside the piano like they're giving it a colonoscopy, and then they cover it with blankets, maybe because they're embarrassed to see the colonoscopy. I don't know, but to really record a piano for its full fidelity, you open that lid and you set the mics away and you really let that piano breathe and let that sound coagulate in the room. Many years ago, I was doing albums with a contemporary Christian act called Second Chapter of Acts. And Annie Herring, who was a member of that group, was also the pianist, and Buck Herring, her husband, was the engineer, and Buck is the engineer I recorded I Am Woman with Helen Reddy with and stuff. So all this stuff gets all mixed up. But Annie was a fabulous pianist, and in one of the places where they lived, they built a room specifically for her piano. So it was wide open, and just her piano sound was incredible when she'd sit down. I mean, you heard full fidelity and not this muffled sound, where people go, God, I can hear the damper pedals. Well, of course you can. You've got a mic shoved up the piano's butt. You're going to hear the mechanics of it. So, okay, I digress. So we did some work at Skywalker Ranch, and we had Jimmy in that room, and God, the piano sounded just beautiful. And we go to listen to the playback, and we're going, what the hell's that sound? What's going on? And we're listening really closely to it. And George Massenburg is engineering, so I know it's not an engineering issue. And he's playing, but in the playing, we're hearing this kind of a what is that? Kind of everybody's scratching their heads going. So we go back in and we're sitting in the room and we're playing with the piano, and suddenly we hear that sound and we go, what is this? Well, right outside that room was a creek. It was frogging time. And we go outside and the creek is full of frogs. And you out there, and it was, it was like so loud. And all of a sudden we had this exquisite piano in this beautiful room, and we're hanging packing blankets all over the walls and stuff, trying to dampen out the frogs. So no matter how great your gear is, how well you prep for things, anything can happen. So that's it. But one of the other projects we did with Linda was right across the road. And the thing that was fascinating about Lucas's complex was historically, before George bought the land, it was known as Lucas Valley. And there's an off-ramp up there that's Lucas Valley Road. So it's kind of like, how do you not buy this land when it's already named after you? So, I mean, it was, it's one of those amazing coincidences. But right across Lucas Valley Road was another studio up at the top of the mountains called The Site. And we did a lot of work up at the site. That was where I was when I was contacted by Michael Frondelli, and I was doing one of Linda's projects, and Michael contacted me while I was there about doing the Barefoot Servants album. So all these things, once again, I always kind of allude this whole business as to like a big onion, and or an artichoke. Just keep peeling away at it, and there's more goodies inside as you go along. It's kind of like an endless journey going through these things. But we were up at that studio working, and Linda got really into knitting, and every time she was doing anything to relax, she's just knitting away, just at it. And then one of the days I look over and she's knitting like this, and I go, Linda, are you okay? Everything all right? And she looks up and goes, yeah, just my eyes are bothering me. I really can't see that well today. And I look at her, and one of the lenses of her glasses had fallen out. I look, I said, one of your lenses is missing. And then we went back and like the vocal booth, found it on the floor and popped it in. And she goes, oh, okay. And she's back knitting again. But I mean, just what an astounding character. I think one of the great heartbreaks in this business is, when you look at like the loss of Jeff Porcaro and Carlos Vega and Larry London and so many, Reggie Young, God, Reggie, so many people have passed, and that's a tragedy. But when I look at like Linda and getting hit with Parkinson's that shut down her ability to sing, is so very, very sad. And anytime I see that kind of a thing, just because you are so good, yet the thing that you love so much has been taken away from you. I'm always asked about who my favorite bass players are. And one of my absolutely favorite bassists in the world is Ronstadt Abragamov. Ronstadt was the principal bassist with the London Symphony Orchestra. And I discovered him on YouTube years ago. And he's staggering. His abilities are just, I sit there with my mouth on the floor and just go, how is this even possible? The dexterity, the intonation, the feel, the sound, everything about this guy is amazing. And when I do interviews and I mention his name, you usually get like this blank expression of, but he had a stroke a few years ago and can no longer play. I don't know if he's teaching now, maybe, but he, to see somebody who was that remarkable, kind of like Phil Collins, is still one of the best drummers I've ever worked with, and he's been really kind of robbed of the ability to play drums because he doesn't want to play if he can't play at the level that he knows he played at. And because of the bad surgeries and physical, issues he has to deal with, he can't do that. So with Linda, though, I talk to Linda on a regular basis, and her spirits are good, and she's just a remarkable, remarkable human being. And when we got a chance to do this song, it was extra special because it's Linda and Aaron Neville together. And I love Aaron so much. I've done his Christmas albums and stuff, the whole Neville family, that lineage is quite, that's a whole story thread unto itself. But the first time I met Aaron, here's this big strapping dude, and he's got like daggers tattooed on his face and everything. And then he opens his mouth and you go, it's like the heavenly choir, this angelic voice coming out of this guy. It was a fabulous time in the studio with them. With Peter Asher was producing it, and so I thought rather than playing Jackson or Cobham today, I just wanted to honor Linda and Aaron, but especially Linda. She is a dear friend, a remarkable, remarkable human being and artist. And I'm glad that when I talk to her, she sounds in good spirits and healthy, except for the fact that she's dealing with this disorder. But there's a lot of people that are suffering with it, the Michael J. Foxes, and then the average person. I know a lot of people that are just Joe or Mary, anybody that are dealing with this, and it's a tough one. So, but it was a pleasure to play on this record. I'm very, very proud of it, and I just want you to enjoy it too. So we'll take a listen, and then I'll talk to you afterwards. We'll bask for a moment in the glory of it, though.
Look at this face, I know the years are showing. Look at this life, I still don't know where it's going.
Goosebumps.
I don't know much, but I know I love you. And that may be all I need to know.
Look at these eyes, they never seem better. Look at these dreams, so big and so better. I know I love you. That may be all I need to know.
So many questions, still looking answers. So much I've never pushed through.
And when I'm feeling, sometimes I see so clear. The only truth I know is
Look at this man, so blessed with inspiration. Look at this soul, still searching for salvation. I don't know much, but I know I love you. That may be all I need to know.
Bob Mann on guitar. They're so good. They're so good. I love power ballads too. You know, I love playing rock and roll. I love kicking ass. I love getting down and dirty. But boy, there's nothing quite like power ballads. I was listening earlier to I think let me see where. Hold on. The beautiful "A Song for You," which so many people have covered. I think Leon Russell wrote that, but I got the luxury of recording that with Ray Charles, and Steve Gadd was playing drums and stuff. And you listen to Ray, and you just go, God, this shit is so good. But one last little anecdote: the hardest session I probably ever played was with Linda. When she had done the Pirates of Penzance on Broadway, they decided to do the movie about it. and they were going to do the movie to the score that was recorded by the Pit Orchestra on Broadway when they did it. By the time they got to recording it, apparently the musicians were just, like walking through the show. There was a lot of mistakes and stuff. I mean, not the stuff that the general public would hear, but certainly something that if you were putting this onto a big screen, you would be well aware of it. So they decided to replace everything. And the first thing that they brought in to replace was me coming in on bass to replace the bass parts on it. They wanted to solidify that bottom. Peter Asher was involved in producing. Val Garay was engineering. We did it at Sound Factory, either Sound Factory or Record One. I can't remember if we had moved over at that point. And the conductor was there from it. But the thing they never did was they never ran a video camera of him conducting the orchestra. So all of a sudden, I'm sitting there and I've got, reams. I mean, I had a music stand that looked like I had the New York phone book on it. There were so many parts and cues. And with Gilbert and Sullivan, you would have things that were jumping tempos and all over the place, like incredible, time and key changes and all this stuff in the context of their music. It didn't sound that complicated, but when you were looking at these pages and realizing that there are tempo changes coming up, and I would look over at the conductor and he'd go, I don't know, I can't help you. I was just conducting. It was so hard because I had them like crank Linda's vocal up so high that I could, before she was going to come in, I could hear her go. I could hear, my cue was her breathing on this. And it was so hard. I mean, sometimes 4 bars could take an hour on this thing. And I finally, at one point, I'm just sitting there looking at the music stand and everybody's kind of tense. And I just took my fist and punched the music stand as hard as I could, dented the whole thing in, and all my music went flying around the room. Everybody like freaked out and jumped. I said, okay, I needed that. Okay, let's get the paper back on the stand. And we were in there for several days, long days, until we finally got it all done. And eventually everything was replaced, and it was used in the movie when they made the movie. So that's that. I just wanted to talk about Linda. Linda, in fact, I'll probably call her today just to see how she's holding up through all this. But she is an absolutely dear heart and a dear treasure. I think one of the biggest thrills for Judith Owen was when we played up in the Bay Area. Linda came to our show and flipped out over Judith. And she wrote these beautiful words about it that Judith has been able to use on promotional things, just as Jackson Browne did. Jackson said that she was a master class in how to do a show. So it's been really, really wonderful for Judith to make these associations, and I'm really happy that I'm in a position to facilitate things like this. So I wish you all a great day. I will play tomorrow. Maybe you're enjoying this more than me sitting and playing, but I'm gonna hunker down and try to get through Dr. My Eyes. I haven't played that in a long time, but it is really one of the very first experiences I had with Jackson Browne in the studio was Dr. My Eyes, and there's some good story to that. So maybe I'll jump into that tomorrow. So wish you all the best, man. Sending out to you, because you are a really lovely channel for me to be enjoying. And I tell you, I read every comment that comes in and I respond to what I can. And I love that aspect of this whole situation is our give and take through all this. And as I do every day, and it's the truth, because I'm hearing back from doctors and nurses especially saying, why do these people say this is a hoax? We're dealing with life and death every day, and this is real. Now, there may be circumstances to all of this stuff that are questionable, the politicizing of it on all sides, and where all this stuff is coming and going, and all this, and the frustrations. But people are dying. So this is the real deal, and the numbers are climbing all the time. So my shout out to everybody who's working hard. I was out running errands this morning and at the market and doing some stuff, and everybody at the market, their energy level, is so good, man. They're just going, you be safe, and you take good care, and everybody's like really watching out for each other. So it's important. So all the best. I will see you tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day or morning or night or whatever, because we seem to be in a ton of time zones here. So that's pretty damn cool. So talk to you tomorrow. Bye.